Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us in this session. I hope you had a great lunch. This is the breakout session on Vietnam. My name is Roxon. I'm the Area Director for STV Vietnam office based in Ho Chi Minh City. Can you all hear me at the back? Okay, great, thanks. And I will be bringing you through this presentation. The title for this session is Understanding and Unlocking Vietnam's Market Potential. Now, before we begin, just want to let you know that this session will open up to a panel discussion and a Q&A later, so I ask that you kindly please hold your questions until then. In the meantime, you can also send your questions to Mentimeter, and we will tackle them later. Details of Mentimeter are projected on the screen right now. So, let us begin the session proper. Early this morning, for those of you who attended this morning's session, our Chief Executive of Singapore Tourism Board made mention of some 5 shifts. The first one he talked was about identifying new market opportunities. Then, of course, he also talked a bit about the Vietnam market, and I'm here to excite you and tell you how true that is. I'm very excited about the Vietnam market, and I will try to convey this excitement to all of you, and hopefully you will find the opportunities that you want in your business. So, my presentation will bring you through 4 parts. I'll give you a snapshot of Vietnam, followed by a feel for today's traveler, the changes that are happening, as well as our work in market and the results. A very appropriate quote, I thought. Now, let's take a look at Vietnam, and let me explain why we are so optimistic about the market. Let's look at the population. Just April of this year, the Vietnam General Office for Family Planning and Population gave a 94.7 million number for this year in terms of population. So one statistic to keep in mind. Our 2 biggest markets or origin sources of visitors come from Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi. That's their population size. The demographics in terms of age profile, you can see that between 15 and 24 years is 16%, 25-54 is 45%. In short, a very young population. Females dominate a little, and I guess that is also important because in Vietnam, the female is an economic contributor and a decision maker when it comes to deciding where the family goes for holiday. So very important to know that. Yay for the women. Okay, now let's go for GDP and inflation. The 2018 GDP growth target is 6.5 to 6.7%. This is the 4th consecutive year, in fact. Vietnam has reached at least a 6% GDP growth. The target for 2018 is there, between 6.5 to 6.7%. Now, inflation is also down from a high of 9.1% in 2012 to just 4% last year, and it is predicted to be 4% for the next few years. You heard about the importance of the middle class population. The mass and affluent population, or MAC, mass and affluent population, is projected to be 33 million by 2020. Now, other sources have a bit different numbers. ADB, as Asian Development Bank, says is 33 million by 2030, so slightly less after a longer period, 10 years later. But Nielsen is more optimistic. Nielsen says 44 million by 2030. Per capita income is at between 3,002 to 3,005 by 2020. So what does this tell you? What is clear here is that it's a large catchment area, a growing economy, and Nielsen says Singapore is going to be an important destination for the middle class. Now let's take a little bit more of a look at some of the other numbers. Let's look at outbound. Annual growth of 10 to 15% outbound. In 2012, it was 4.2 million departures. In 2017, we reached as high as 7.5 million departures. Annual income, 5,000 to 35,000 US dollars. And according to Boston Consulting Group, middle class is defined as anyone earning more than 714 US dollars per month. That that would make the middle class segment the fastest growing segment in Asia. Now, two caveats here. Caveat number one is there is tremendous disparity in income levels in Vietnam. So I will take this number with a pinch of salt, although it is public information. I will take this information with a pinch of salt because there's a huge disparity, and even more important, there's a significant undeclared income. Okay, so I can tell you that the numbers are much higher than this. Okay. Now, the Vietnamese, when they travel, they spend globally around 7 to 8 billion US dollars. This is already double the figure in 2012. Okay, and what does all this mean? It means that there's an increasing propensity to travel and spend amongst the Vietnamese. And these are some of the quotes that we've obtained from our research. Now, Euromonitor in 2017 also confirms this. They say that the soaring numbers for outbound travel can be attributed to the rapidly growing middle class. Now, how are Vietnamese coming to Singapore? Well, essentially, Hanoi, Da Nang, and Ho Chi Minh City. Those are the numbers. And they reflect actually our arrivals from Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh remains our top source city, followed by Hanoi, and then it is spread out throughout the rest of the other cities. Here is the current annual travel pattern. Now, I show this to you because later on in the slides, I will be coming back to this to make another point, right? So currently, the travel pattern is this. What you notice from this is there's only one peak travel season, and that's essentially the summer travel season. In fact, that is June, July, August. And already in August, you see a settling down of the numbers already. But unlike many markets that you may be used to, you notice there's no secondary peak or a joint peak. Sometimes you have a secondary peak towards perhaps the tail end of the year or covering the Christmas, New Year holidays. We don't have that currently, okay? Now, now that you have a sense of the market, let me talk a little bit about the current Vietnamese traveler. What is the current Vietnamese traveler like? What do they do? Okay, what tickles their fancy? In 2015, STV conducted focus group discussions, and these were the three findings. Okay, the first finding is that we are safe and easy to get to. This is deeply rooted in the mindset of the Vietnamese traveler about Singapore. Number two, that there is a tremendous difference between Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh and how people make decisions there and what they do, okay? And we must be cognizant of these differences in our strategy planning and planning. And finally, word-of-mouth advocacy remains very important and are strong influences. Okay, so let's get to know a bit about the Vietnamese traveler. Firstly, in 2017, just last year, Changi Airport Group commissioned also a study in Vietnam, and one of the findings was that people are relatively new to travel in Vietnam. Well, now what does that mean? Okay, essentially that means they are first-generation travelers. And the reason for this is, not too long ago, travel was seen to be a luxury item, a waste of money. If they had extra cash, what they would do is they would save it for a rainy day or invest. It's not too long ago that this idea of travel took root. And even amongst the generation, the seniors and the graying population today, that same attitude about saving, investing is still very strong. Now, the opening up to travel is also relatively new. Visa restrictions were very prominent in Vietnam. And we are slowly seeing some relaxation of visa regulations and requirements. And that plays a big role in influencing the decision of a Vietnamese traveler as to where they would go. So what does this mean? This means that the newness of travel to them means when they decide to travel, there's a little bit of angst, a little bit of uncertainty and anxiety, right? And this can be seen in the concerns about language. And this is very important. We in STB in Vietnam, we maintain our Facebook, pure Vietnamese. All our collaterals are in Vietnamese to try to reduce that pain, that uncertainty, that angst. So where possible, at every opportunity, we try to engage them in Vietnamese. Not me, my Vietnamese sucks, but my colleagues in Vietnam, they do a wonderful job. Food is also an issue. Unlike many countries, the Vietnamese palate is very unique. When they come to Singapore, if you try to introduce them to Indian food or Malay food, I think you have a lot of problems. They like food that they are familiar and comfortable with. So they tend to go for our hawker centers, our Chinese restaurants, right? Like the Crystal Jades, the Din Tai Fongs, those kind of restaurants, right? They tend to go for those. Okay. We have tried to push the boundary a little in Vietnam. We've tried to introduce them to Peranakan food. It's still mixed whether we've been successful in that. And it's actually very surprising to me because when I first went to Vietnam, I was so surprised to learn that the most favorite food amongst the Vietnamese is not our Hainanese chicken rice, it's not our laksa, it's frog porridge. And any decent Vietnamese who comes to Singapore knows exactly which lorong in Geylang to get the frog porridge. So that's amazing. And that, to me, is a bit of a signal, a sensing of how particular and unique that palate is. Now, I had mentioned visa issues earlier, right? I'll give you an example. Just last year, beginning of last year, Korea, Japan, Taiwan relaxed their visa regulations, right? Which means it costs less for you to get a visa. And the travel agent can process the visa for the group. So you don't have to personally go do it, right? And the requirements were much lesser. As a result, you saw a huge upsurge of Vietnamese visitors to Korea and Japan, etc. Of course, it helps that Korea and Japan are aspirational destinations. People have heard about them, but they used to not go because it was such a hassle to get a visa and expensive. Now, we talk about visa. Talk about the social media platform. Because of this uncertainty and angst, it's very important for Vietnamese to get word of mouth, get information from word of mouth sources and social media. Right? And Facebook is by far, Facebook is by far the top social media platform in Vietnam. So we keep a close eye on our Facebook account to make sure content is always refreshed, it's always interactive, it's always interesting, it always updates as to everything that they can do in Singapore. Now, word of mouth is very important. CAG study also confirmed that. Vietnamese are relatively inexperienced and socially driven travelers. Okay? Word of mouth is very important. In fact, according to research that was made by Nielsen, amongst the global population who trust word of mouth recommendations, the Vietnamese is ranked second, only after the Filipinos. Now, I've spent some years in the Philippines myself, and I will speculate that I think for the Filipinos, it is number one because they are such a social compact, a strong social compact amongst themselves, right? But I think Vietnamese is because of this uncertainty. The word of mouth factor plays a huge role. Now, a bit more about the Vietnamese traveler. I cannot talk about the Vietnamese traveler without talking about two things: shopping and photography. And this is something that's very important to know. Vietnamese love to shop. Okay, and Singapore has a right to win here. And when I talk about shopping, I'm talking about three categories. Okay, you have the luxury shopping, and you have then the mass shopping, and there's the shopping for Singapore souvenirs, right? So let's go to the luxury shopping. Luxury shopping are brands that I always tell my colleagues, I don't even know how to pronounce some of these brands, but never mind. But they choose Singapore because they feel that Singapore, they can trust, there's a peace of mind about the genuine article. What they buy is genuine, right? And they are assured that if there's any problem, there's easy recourse. They're not quite sure if they buy it back home, right? And interestingly enough, it might be even more expensive in Singapore, but that's fine. At least they know it's genuine. Let's go to the mass shopping. Your H&Ms, your Uniqlos, your Charles & Keith. Charles & Keith is extremely popular. Okay. Oh, by the way, I want to tell you, the top growing brand in Vietnam is Gucci. I was surprised to learn this too. LV is still popular, but Gucci is by far the fastest growing brand today. And I understand from Gucci aficionados it's because you can really show off big labels everywhere, kind of thing. I think that is very important because the Vietnamese love to show that they have it. Okay? So, shopping. Mass shopping. Charles & Keith, for example. The reason they like to come to Singapore to shop is because, one, back home, the range is very limited. Two, they may not have the latest seasons. And three, it may be even cheaper here. Very different from the luxury items, right? Now, they also like to buy, of course, things that they can brag about, things that other people cannot get. So Singapore souvenirs are wonderful, but one caveat here, it's important when you are producing interesting, high-end or very unique souvenirs to keep an eye on the price factor, because you want to get their attention first, get the buy-in first, because if you start being expensive, they may not be interested. Now, I talked a bit about photography. How can I say this? Vietnamese love to take pictures. I mean, they just love to take pictures. Okay? It's unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. I've seen couples go on dates where the guy is on his phone, the girl is just taking selfies of herself. And this is their date, you know. And I've seen situations where, and they dress up to take a picture. I mean, fully dress up, makeup, everything, you know. I've seen ladies scolding the photographer. I don't know whether it's a boyfriend or whatever, but scolding the photographer because the photographer took the picture at the wrong moment. Okay? And she's wearing this slit, and she must flip the slit, and the photographer then click at the right moment. They love photography, and that's a lesson, because that tells you a bit about what kind of opportunities you might want to avail yourself of in making sure your property gets known, and they will post it on Instagram, and they will brag about the pictures. Now, there are shifts. We've heard this morning, there are shifts happening, and there are important shifts that are happening in Vietnam. These are shifts that are gradually happening. I will not be able to go through all of them today, but I'll just highlight a few, I think, ones that are quite important. The first shift I think I want to talk about is growing outbound. Now, I touched a little bit about that just now. I want to touch a little bit more about this because there are a few points I want to make. One is, there is a travel pattern I talked about. And this travel pattern was the summer season, right? Now, traditionally, Vietnam has the least number of holidays, one of the countries with the least number of public holidays, okay? And they have very limited annual leave. I think if I recall, government mandated is about 10 to 14 days maximum, okay? But there is one long holiday they have, and that's the Tet holiday. And that Tet holiday is similar to our Chinese New Year, okay? Except that theirs is around 10 official days, okay? In fact, there are some businesses that close even longer than that during that period. Now, traditionally, during Tet, people used to go home to the provinces, right, to stay with the family, people they've not seen for that year, right? And they'll spend the entire Tet period with them. And after that, they go back to their places of work. We are starting to see that change. We are starting to see people who go back home only for a few days and then start traveling. And when I say traveling, I mean outbound travel, yeah, start traveling. Or they will go home and then the whole family will go and leave and go for holiday. Or they might not even go back to the province that year at all and just go on holiday. Okay? We're starting to see that change. Now, what does that mean? That means that, if you remember this annual travel pattern slide, we see going forward another window of opportunity coming up, where another peak travel season will start to develop. Okay, and that is during the Tet period, which will be January or February, depending on what year it is. Okay, so something to take into account. Now, I would also like to point out that the Vietnamese are particularly love discounts and promotions. Right? So something to keep in mind. And if there is an air ticket promotion in particular, they are very likely to make the booking and then decide on the plans later. Okay, so something to keep in mind. The other trend that's important is the move from cash to credit. Vietnamese has traditionally been a very cash-heavy society. Even when they travel, they are known to bring wads of cash with them, right? We also see that changing. There has been upsurge of interest in credit cards. The banks all know this too. And some of the banks have in fact reduced their floor eligibility to apply for a credit card. Some have tried to make their product more attractive by waiving first year's membership fee or waiving this or that, but becoming very popular. Now, this is a reflection of the fact that this is a young population. right? And as a young population, they're getting used to the idea of credit card payments, no longer cash. And this is something you see throughout the country. You're seeing more and more establishments offering credit card payments as an option. Now, this also is a societal change because this means that there is another area in the society that's changing, and that is the idea of spending, the style of spending. So, I told you cash-heavy society, right? Vietnamese normally do not spend more than they earn. In trying to find candidates for our office, I have interviewed quite a few Vietnamese, and it is a surprise to me that a lot of them, when I talk to them, they would have already left the job even before they have secured another one. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, I would never do that, right? Leave a job before I secure another one. Who knows when I'll get the other one, right? But it seems in Vietnam it's quite normal for this. So I ask these candidates, I ask them, don't you feel like nervous? How do you know when you get a next job? And they tell me that the reason why they can do it is because they don't have obligations. They don't spend beyond what they earn. But we are seeing that change. With the credit card mentality, with the young generation, we are seeing the idea of spending spending on credit is becoming to take foothold. The whole idea that, I've got years ahead of me, I can spend a bit more, I have so many years to pay it back, that is starting to take root. And you see this everywhere in the world, it's just that you see this now changing in Vietnam, right? Now, there's also a practical element to this, and that is the shift from travel agents to OTAs, right? Because of the uncertainty I talked about earlier, it used to be that the Vietnamese traveler depended very much on the travel agents because they didn't want to deal with the hassle, right? They were worried, they're not sure, right? They wanted the travel agent to plan everything nicely for them so they don't have any embarrassment, any angst, any problems that they will face, right? But slowly, they are more and more becoming independent. And they are starting to do their research online, more comfortable doing that, more comfortable booking online, the elements of they might just book, for example, the air ticket online and maybe the accommodation online, okay? But they may still, some of them still go to travel agent to prepare the itinerary for them. But slowly we see this move towards the OTAs, right? And that means, of course, you need the plastic because you need that material to make your payments. Now, they are also more inclined to experience as much dining and retail experiences as they want, right? Which means that they are more open to these kind of experiences, which means that the idea of carrying more and more and more cash becomes untenable anyway, right? So there are practical reasons why these shifts are taking place. So cash to credit, more disposable incomes, spending, more experiences in dining and retail. TA to OTA, I talked about. And these are some of the sites that they are going to. Vet Travel, Hanoi Rate Tours, Saigon Tourists are more traditional TAs. Some of these others are the OTAs or sites that people are going to today. Now, I also cannot do justice to this presentation without talking a little bit about Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh. Now, earlier on I mentioned that even the Changi Airport Group's study and also our study in 2015 had the same conclusions that there are differences in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh that we must be aware of. Now, this is not intended to be comprehensive, but this gives you a sense of what are some of the differences. For those who are not very familiar with the country, Hanoians look at themselves as the cultural masters. It's the government center, right? The government center, Hanoi, but they look upon themselves as more cultured group of people than the people in the south. Okay, that's how they view themselves. More sophisticated, more cultured, more deep-thinking people. In the south, it's very much a capitalistic society component. Everything is about business and commerce. Now kind of thing. Now, therefore, what does that mean? That means that the Ho Chi Minh people are more open to new experiences. You can see a Ho Chi Minh visitor traveling or exploring hidden gems in Singapore. It's not that you will not see a Hanoian visitor do that, but the chances are less. The Hanoi visitor will prefer to see the iconic attractions, the big things, the gardens by the bay, our Marina Bay Sands. They love to do that. I'll give you an example: photography. Hanoians are known to travel with a group of friends, female friends, because remember, female is strong there, female friends, they'll go together. And they are known to prepare and plan with each other what outfit they will wear that day so that the picture is coordinated. So that, to that extent, right? Okay, I see some nodding heads here, so okay. Let's see, I think the rest of things, yes, traveling with family is important. Okay, even for both places. And bragging is very important, right? I told you the brag factor is very important. The brag factor is so important that how many stamps they have in a passport and which country they've been to in a passport is very important. It's a big deal for them. Okay? So let's, with this, let me talk a little bit about the work that STV is doing in Vietnam. These are three of our strategic strategies for Vietnam, of which there are some of these elaborations as to what they mean. We attempt every time, in everything we do, to deepen our engagement with the Vietnamese public. Not just to deepen engagement, but build affinity, a love for Singapore. One of the reasons for that is, if you saw in our 2015 FGD, Singapore is perceived to be very cold, not warm-hearted people, that we are very cold-hearted people. It's full of regulations and very strict about everything. When we are small, we don't have very much to do, okay? And it's a constant battle to make sure that this perception is overturned. Of course, we enter into collaborations with many of our partners in order to achieve our objective. And there are a lot of Vietnamese, because of their growing wealth and growing propensity to travel, they are starting to apply for passports. So these are people with new passports, not quite sure where it's going to be the first trip. Remember the angst and the uncertainty? We're working with our partners. Vet Travel is one of them, where we are trying to encourage them to choose Singapore as a first destination. And this is so important because our statistics show that 2/3 of our visitors to Singapore from Vietnam are repeat visitors. Now, what does that tell us? That tells us that once we get them there, we know they'll be loving the experience and they'll come back. And our statistics also show that the repeat visitor spends more than the first time. Which again suggests to me that once they have got over this uncertainty and they are more familiar with Singapore, they will spend. And the Vietnamese do spend, as you can see. Okay, here is, some of you have heard about our marketing principles, our STV marketing principles of stories, fans, and channels. We hold this dear to our heart as we do our work in Vietnam. So these are some of the examples of things we have done. You can see them. I will highlight just 3 in the interest of time. On the extreme right, which is here, my left, this is a video, a destination marketing video we specially created in Vietnam. It is done in a pop-up paper mache style. Okay, so this is one of the things we did. This is a group of Grab cars, vehicles in both Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City that we plastered our new brand on during the brand launch in the period of September. In August, we had a global brand launch last year, and remember, as our chief executive said, we then trickled down to all the satellite cities, and we had ours in September, so we had that. This is a collaboration with Singapore Airlines when they had their 25th anniversary, and they will use the opportunity to also introduce their new seats, new business class seats. We call this Go Singapore La. The whole idea is, again, to ensure people have a sense that Singapore is fun. You know, just say Go Singapore is quite boring, right? Go Singapore La is a bit of coolness to it. So we had a great time here. And one point is Singapore Airlines used this opportunity to offer 100 tickets at cost to the first 100 people who showed up for this. And we were very worried because we were always told that Vietnamese never queue for things. They hate to queue. So we were wondering whether We thought, okay, we try it, right? And we were surprised to see that at 6 o'clock in the morning, we had this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the mall opens around 10. This was at Saigon Centre, one of the top malls. In fact, I would say their top mall. Takashimaya is the flagship tenant. They just opened there. This is the second year there. So we were surprised to see by 6 o'clock, 6:30, there were already about a huge line, which is great. We were very happy with that. Yeah. Okay, so again, this is a snapshot of some of the other activities. Here you can see here, this is our collaboration with Takashimaya over a 5-week period. These are some of our fans, some of our market launches, our brand launch, some of our coverage of some of our activities that we have done over the year. Okay, so with all these things that we have done in Vietnam, what has been the result thus far? I think this is a very significant slide to wrap up some of the things I've told you about what a vibrant market this is, how exciting it is, and what is the potential here for us. We opened the office in 2004, and you can see there's been a consistent growth from 2004 to last year, right? But I draw your attention to two things. One, the trend line from 2004 to 2015, and the trend line from beyond that. Notice the steeper climb. Last year, we welcomed about 531,000 visitors to Singapore. This is very significant. First time we crossed the 500,000 mark, and we became the top 10 market. Now, this is significant. Why? Because in the past years, Vietnam market to Singapore has always been the 13th ranked market, 1-3. We jumped to 10th last year. 13.2% growth, and a 33% increase in tourism receipts. Again, reinforcing the spend. These are some of our activities going forward this year. Already, we've had quite a few. It's been quite a busy year. We had a partnership with HSBC, and we do that because, remember, credit cards are becoming very popular, so we identify banks or credit card institutions that are very interested to work with us for win-win solutions. So we have HSBC. We've had 3 corporate firms from Hanoi thus far. Next week, there's going to be another corporate firm from Hanoi coming down here. We currently have collaborations with Vet Travel and Klook, which is an OTA on some initiatives. We have appreciation functions and trade updates coming in Ho Chi Minh in June. This year is the celebration of 45 years of G2G relations between Vietnam and Singapore. We are leveraging on that. There are some things we are planning which will be a surprise. We, of course, have on-ground public engagements we plan to continue. And I would like to take this opportunity to pitch. It's not this year, but next year. Take the opportunity to pitch ATF, which of course is accompanied by Travex in 2019, which will be held and hosted by Vietnam in 2019. So if any of you want to join the Singapore delegation, please let us know. Okay, so that is pretty much my presentation. We look forward to your support. And I want to conclude with something that we are very proud of. Remember, we talked about innovation and how we need to be stand above the noise and make sure that because we have tremendous competition in Vietnam. I mean, we have to fight against countries like Korea and Japan, right? We have managed to hold our own, right? But we need to continue to fight the perception, need to continue to tell people we've got wonderful experiences, right? And make sure that the accessibility is fantastic, right? So in that same spirit, we used the fact that we have a new brand. Our target segment is families with young children 12 years and below, the other segment being early in careers. We use a passion ambassador and use music as a unifying theme. Now, this family that you see there is Hom Bak. The gentleman is Hom Bak. He's a famous Vietnamese singer, songwriter, and actor. His family has this clean-cut image in Vietnam. When we brought them down to Singapore for the shoot, music video shoot, I tell you, you will fall in love with the 2 kids. Perfect family, daughter, son. Daughter is the creative type. Mother is model, pretty, elegant, but a great mother. The daughter follows her, very creative, loves artists, painting and all that. The son is so studious, he reads history books. So it's this this strange conflict there, but it's a wonderful family, very clean-cut image, and of course, very much associated with Singapore's clean-cut family image, right? So we created this video. We launched it in January. Thus far, it's had more than 3 million views on YouTube, and you can see the numbers in Facebook. So we're going to take the opportunity to play you this song. You'll find yourself tapping to the music, okay? In case you're wondering how this relates to passion, well, the story is, take the daughter, for example, in the beginning scene, she's talking about, I can fly, right? And the son being very practical, saying, no, you can't fly, don't be ridiculous, right? So we bring to Singapore, and you saw an I fly scene, illustrating that in Singapore, we can make your passion possible. Okay, so that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Roxanne. And good afternoon again to our industry partners, colleagues and friends, and especially to our panelists on stage. Thank you very much for joining us today, this afternoon session. My name is Edward from Singapore Tourism Board. Recently, there have been calls asking for Singapore and Singaporeans to relook at Southeast Asia, suggesting that Singapore should leverage on its position in Southeast Asia, that Singaporeans should know the language and culture of our neighbours better, that we should embed ourselves in this huge middle-class consumer market. And recently, there's the ASEAN Leadership Programme that our Finance Minister announced in this year's budget. So I thought this session is timely for us to know one of our important Southeast Asia neighbours better, and that's Vietnam. And we have on stage our panelists here to share their views. Maybe I'll start off inviting our panelists to share, their general thoughts on the Vietnam market from their perspective, or the Singapore market from a Vietnamese perspective, however it should be. And maybe I will start with Miss Maggie Ho, who's been in the industry for many years, an industry veteran. Perhaps Maggie, maybe I can invite you to share your views on a Singapore destination from the perspective of the Vietnamese or your Vietnamese clients, for example. Maggie.
Hello, my name is Maggie Ho. I'm working for Viet Travels, one of the tour operators in Vietnam. In my company, we're handling inbound, domestic, and outbound. But like he said in his presentation, the outbound is our majority for the companies, especially for Singapore. Onway is our top 5 destination when we started the business until now. So I have been working for the company for over 10 years, from sales moving to products and purchasing department. And lucky that today we are here and we can see that now Vietnam can be in the top 10 of Singapore. So this is a good thing. But in my company, like I say, Singapore Onway is our top 5 destination. We cannot comparing with Cambodia because nearby borders, it's very close, and Thailand is so long time. But this is a good and significant numbers. Like I say, like me, we think that Singapore STV already have the presentation about Vietnamese tourists, and this is the changes from years to years until now. And I must say, in the presentation, what I like much is 3 points. The first thing is he can identify the difference between people from North Vietnam, mean Hanoi, and South Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh cities. This is also what our concern, because we have many brand office throughout Vietnam. We have about nearly 20 office, every city that we have office. And our main business is head office in Ho Chi Minh City, and Hanoi is only one of the big office there as well. And I also, like my company, we also realize the changes and the difference between the cards, transfer payment and credit cards using, because like I always tell him in my talks that even my parents, not very old, over 50 or 60s, but they prefer having cars at home, holding cards, see them every day, than keep it in the bank or using credit cards. Even I give them one credit card, but whenever I transfer the money into their credit cards, easy for them to use, but they come to the ATM, withdraw the money, and keep it in their pocket. So this is one of the story I want to say. And my company, we also realized that group travelings, I have to mention, majority of our companies is group traveling and incentive. We doing series bookings, incentive, and free and easy, but not like individual, but we some kind of private, smaller groups traveling for family. Our majorities is we're handling with groups. So in the last 2 years, we realized that many international brands come into Vietnam, and how we travel survives in the next 5 years. That's why the company, we spend a lot of money to invest on the apps and online. That means in the future, Vietnamese travelers not use based on the travel agent anymore. So but we have to manage between the groups and the individual. We have to take advantage of our strong points that we have allocation, volume for groups, and then apply for online or individuals. This is our projects that we are doing. And some of the things that I want to share, that we must thanks for the coming to Singapore like me, come here for about 20 times over. For family travelings, I take my family here already twice, and we also have holidays in next month, May, coming Singapore again. So Singapore is a repeated destination, not only for myself, but for Vietnamese as well, because we feel comfortable when we're traveling to Singapore. This is one of the things that, and we, not only STB realize that, we also do research, and we realize that we should encourage fresh new travelers apply passport and their traveling. That's why we have, last year, we do a promotion. As soon as the new tourists, they have a new passport, they're coming to book a tour with us, not only Singapore, but other destinations, then we give them promotion. Let's say give them discount, let's say over double than the normal tourists. Encourage them to make passport. As soon as they have passport and they travel one time, and with my company, then they will continue repeat it. Next year, every year they continue going. So this is one of these things that I realized that SCB already mentioned in the PowerPoints that he is sharing. But I just want to share some of the story from us as well.
Thank you, Maggie. And it's a huge market because I suppose many Vietnamese still do not hold passports. And
Correct.
Singapore is now top, for the first time in 2017, we're a top 10 source market. Vietnam is number 10 in 2017 because there are many group travelers. And also we see the rise of FIT travelers. Yeah. And just a reminder that you can key in your questions to www.menti.com, and the passcode is 892886. The questions are flowing in, so I'll just read them off, and my job is quite easy. I just pass on the questions to the panelists. And perhaps I can also invite Chu. There are some questions coming in on FIT travelers. Would you like to share with the audience your views on the Vietnamese FIT travelers? Who are they? Where are they from? What do they need, etc.?
Hi, everybody. So I'm Trúc, and in the meantime, I'm working for Klook for Vietnam market, so totally based in Ho Chi Minh City. I'm working on, firstly, is the marketing activities for Vietnamese traveler, and secondly is the localization, because for me, for Klook in general, the localization is very important because the Vietnamese like to read anything in Vietnamese. And for our main target audience is a bit different from Viet Travel. We are focusing on FIT traveler. So our main target audience is from 22 to 35 because for Vietnamese traveler traveling overseas is quite late. comparing with Singaporeans. For example, for Singaporeans, you might traveling overseas since you are a student. But for Vietnamese traveler, maybe it will take like 1 or 2 years to graduate, find the first job, and then you can have a financial statement which is allow you to travel overseas. So for the target audience of Klook, they like to do everything on their own. So they book the flight tickets on their own, they book the accommodation on their own, and then they start to plan the trip on their own. Like I have 3 days in Singapore. On the first day I want to visit Universal. On the second day I want to do Singapore Zoo. On the third day I want to like run by the base and win up time, and how can I arrange my trip? So we help user to book on up in destination service. Except for flight tickets and accommodation, you can find anything on Klook, like SIM card, Wi-Fi, day tour, F&B service, massage, anything, even transportation. So our main target audience is that kind of people, and a lot of them are first-time traveler. So what we are helping with them to survive for the first trip to Singapore is to provide the localization content. So up to 90% of the activities on Klook for Vietnamese people are in Vietnamese. So we have our own Vietnamese editor to do all of the copywriting and translating to make sure that all of the itineraries are available in Vietnamese. Secondly is because the pain point of all of the FIT traveler is to plan the trip. So like I have 2 days, so what should I do? Aside from the promotion, we can give them a very good promotion, but they likely will not buy it until they know like where should they take it, how should they go it, and how much time they should spend there. So we help to provide some sample itineraries and to pair with some key influencer to provide user tips and tricks regarding trip planning, not aside from the itinerary, like I'm not good at English, so how can I survive in Singapore? How can I survive the custom? And for example, in Vietnam, we don't have public transportation. We don't have MRT. So a lot of first-timer travel to Singapore is suffering with MRT system. So we pair with the hot blogger, the KOL, to give user tips and tricks about MIT, how to track on MIT map, for example. So that's how we are approaching the target audience pain point and help them to survive and to book the trip to Singapore, so they can have more time on spending with their family, like they can plan their itinerary.
Thank you, Chu. I think there are even more questions on FIT travelers, but I'll come back to you a bit later on. I think Singapore is in a good position because we're well connected to Vietnam. We've got direct flights to Ho Chi Minh City, Hanoi, and Da Nang. I'm not sure if there are new city links, but we know we are in a good position. But we also know that CAG recently conducted some research on the Vietnamese consumers, which Roxanne alluded to them, used some of the slides and content. I'm not sure if Ching Kiat will be kind enough to share some of the insights, for example, the North-South divide, the differences, and things that we do not know as well here in Singapore.
Thanks, Edward. I'm Ching Kiat from Changi Airport. So my responsibility at Changi Airport is we try to bring more traffic to Changi. We try to bring more destinations, more flights for our passengers. So our numbers compared to STV numbers, we look at inbound. It also comprises of outbound and people who come to the airport to transfer. So there are three traffic segments. So looking at our numbers, quite similar to STB's numbers, Vietnam is also our number 10th market and growing quite healthily at about 8% passenger growth per year. If you come down to the city level, it's even more interesting because Ho Chi Minh is our number 8th city in terms of our passenger arrival. So today we are connected to Ho Chi Minh, Hanoi, and Da Nang, and my team is always looking to grow to new cities. And some of the trends, I think, in our own research and FGD study is already Roxanne shared already. There are differences between the north and the south consumer segment. And I think some of the trends we see are also similar to what we see has evolved in other markets like India and China, where maybe the first time traveler, they come in a tour group, they are not so comfortable, they are using the first trip to test out this destination. But for subsequent trips, maybe FIT, and they will be more comfortable. Especially for Singapore, this evolution is quite natural because I think many of our conveniences are, many of aspects of the country is quite convenient to the passenger. Once they come here the first time, they realize that it's quite easy to go by themselves, and then they will buy packages from Troop to see how to get by on their own. I think there's one last point also, that for Changi Airport, we are a big infrastructure, so we also have to take care of our Vietnamese passengers well to ensure that our ambassadors on the ground are able to address the questions from the Vietnamese. And like what Roxanne's suggestion in terms of food as well, I think that was quite interesting insights that we see how to cater to their very specific food needs. I think there are some Vietnamese restaurants inside Changi Airport. There are also a lot of Chinese restaurants to cater to their needs. Today as well, of course, for the Vietnamese traveler, they also have affinity towards the Vietnamese airlines. Today we have Vietnam Airlines and Vietjet flying to Changi Airport. So happens that both of them are in our newest terminal, Terminal 4. So we expect Terminal 4 to have a disproportionate number of Vietnamese passengers. They shop, they come to the airport to shop. I think the top categories that they buy at the airport include liquor, tobacco, perfume, cosmetics, as well as the luxury brands. So again, we must constantly keep up our product to cater to them. Not in Terminal 4, but Terminal 3, we just opened a big LV store. I don't know whether you have, those of you in the audience have been there. So I think those will be quite popular among the Vietnamese. Thanks.
So Chin Kiat has actually answered some of the questions on this on my slide. Do Vietnamese have preferences for local Vietnamese carriers or foreign carriers? So I suppose you've answered that in a way. Maggie, would you have something else to add? Or Chuk? Vietnamese carriers?
Maybe let me talk first on the pawn shop tour operators that we're doing for groups. Yes, Vietnamese customer, they prefer to have Vietnamese carriers because can speak Vietnamese. This is what I think easy for them. And SkyTeam, they have a membership, so they can redeem the miles, everything. But according to the groups organizers like us, operator, we prefer the others airlines. But it's like he says, people like us, when we do in Ho Chi Minh City, we have many choices of low-cost carrier. Even we're using low-cost carrier, but we have to include firstly the luggage. The second can be meals on board as well. We include this to make it like normal carriers, but we cannot do it in Hanoi. People from the north, not easy. They prefer using either Singapore Airlines or Vietnam Airlines than low-cost carrier. Even if low-cost carrier, we include everything in, this is nearly the same, but it's not easy to sell. And then for people from Ho Chi Minh City, when we're selling some kind of promotion groups, we count on minimum 20 or 30 to 40 because we based on the coach size. But people from Hanoi cannot. They were telling from about 20 under. If we book, let's say 25, we have to use 2 tour leaders. Because they said that this is a big group, no one take good care of them. And maybe 2 leaders cannot take photos for them, take turns. So this is some of the very difficult things when we dealing with even local people. So like us, we prefer using international and many choices depending on the price because working on groups. But customer from Ho Chi Minh easy, but from Hanoi, very difficult to to use a low-cost carrier. I think this is one of the reasons the flight from Hanoi is not so many as in Ho Chi Minh City. This is.
just to add to Maggie's comment, I think from her comments, I think Vietnam Airlines and Singapore Airlines will be very happy that they can still have a very loyal customers. I think in addition to the Vietnamese airlines, I think Singapore Airlines has a very strong brand name within Vietnam, as well as Jetstar. I think Jetstar has also a local partner, Jetstar Pacific. So the Jetstar brand name again is quite well known. So we are quite blessed. We have all these 4 strong partners to work with to drive more traffic to Singapore.
Thank you. There are specific questions on Vietnamese consumers' booking periods. So 2 related questions. One is, what is the booking window for Vietnamese? As in, do they book 1 month in advance, 10 months in advance, or or just I want to travel tomorrow, I'll decide today?
1 day in advance. Sorry, this is what we. I must confess. If we're talking about destination without visa, then it can be 1 day. People, they will decide, they will do research, see what happened about 2 weeks. Not like other country that we have a plan, a long plan for take leave. Vietnamese cannot. I don't know why, but they still not apply that. Except if some customer, they working for international company, when people have to apply in advance. Otherwise, in Vietnam, it's not like that. That's why it is very difficult for us to work with airline as well, and services. And Vietnamese don't mind peak season, don't mind high season or blackout day periods. Depending on what they want. So normally we block series and we pay 1 year in advance to get a good deal. But we have to wait, let's say 3 weeks before that. And then let's say Singapore, lucky that we can have 3 weeks that we still have customer coming. But normally about 2 weeks, they will coming and then book. And then decide. That's why in my company, if you have a chance to log in our online system, we do last minute hot deal. That means book 1 day or 2 days before that. Then you can get a good rate, because the last we already paid on to the suppliers. So I must say for Singapore, 2 weeks to 5 days. It's a good deal. Even incentive, I also got some kinds of incentive. Like last month, there's one company asked me, okay, I want to travel by cruise 2,000 once in summer, let's say June and July. But asking, can you give me quotation within 2 days and solution? I said, cannot, but say, I don't mind. So at that time, we have to run all over the way, gave them the solution and everything. So they keep on quiet. Until yesterday, they get back, okay, then you, now we changed our mind. We want to travel in May, 500 per departure. You give us the solution. You see, it's very difficult for travel agents, because very last minute. Everybody have to wait until very near time. Even the incentive, 1 month in advance, that they will call bidding, design. Let's say about 2 weeks, then everything rushing. This is one of the experience from our point of view. But of course, I think some of the time when we do promotion, let's say we have a groups and we want to selling in this period, then get good promotion, then okay. Some people, they okay to, because of the deal, so they willing to pay. Even they pay with the condition that full charge, full cancellation, but still negotiation. If they want to change their mind until the last day, they negotiation, change name or refund. So it's one of the experience.
Chook, do you experience similar short booking periods for your FIT clients?
Yeah, even for me, it's even shorter. Just from the FIT side, for example, like the peak time for us in this year is the 2nd days of Lunar New Year's. So this is the very peak time because a lot of Vietnamese travel to Singapore in the last Lunar New Year in the third day and the fourth day, and they only book on the second day. So, but one of the reasons is because the activities in Singapore actually is why really easy to book. Firstly is mostly they are open day tickets, so it means that they can book first and then decide whenever they want to go. And secondly is we on Klook we provide instant confirmation, so it means like you can book and you will receive the tickets immediately and go straight, skip the queue. So I know that a lot of people come into Universal on the 4th because we have another peak on the 4th that at the Universal Singapore that they come over and they see like a lot of people are lining up and just open Klook and book the ticket and skip the queue and go straight. So we have another peak on the 4th. So for in-destination service and FIT travelers, so I think it's super late. You can like push back because we will run the marketing campaign based on seasonal activities like in the Lunar New Year's, in the Labor Days, in the Independent Days, and especially for the New Year's Day. So kind of push back 2 weeks in advance should be the peak season. And normally they will book the flight ticket first. Flight tickets come first, could be 1 or 2 months earlier, and then accommodation, and then we come really late. But thank goodness that all of the activities in Singapore can adapt. Majority of the activity in Singapore can adapt that late demand, like open day tickets, instant confirmation, and I think pretty flexible regarding the visiting, especially like for winter time, for example, you can pick up the slot, like 2 slots a day, so it's very flexible, and the more flexibility you're giving them, the later they will become.
So it looks like we need to create a new segment for Vietnam, last minute traveler segment, right? Huge opportunity. So there's a specific question on accommodation needs. So if Vietnamese decide today to come tomorrow, what sort of accommodation do they expect tomorrow, for example? Accommodation needs.
Yeah, Ken. Sorry, Ken. Yeah, recently I think they are wise advanced regarding choosing flight tickets and accommodation. So because mostly our target audience are internet oriented, so they are really sensitive with the price. So they use a lot of like navigation tool like Scanner to scan over the price first, and accommodation too. So price is very sensitive for FIT traveler. And if they get a good price, like I know one application is why famous in Vietnam is Hotel Weekly, which is help you to get the last minute deal for accommodation. And I think a lot of people are using it in Vietnam too.
All right, thanks. There's a very specific question for Chinh Kiet. I mean, Vietnamese, like everyone, they need Wi-Fi, need communications, connections. So the pain point of tourists buying a SIM card for Singapore usage is registration is required. How can CAG make this process seamless?
The MHA.
Right, MHA. Okay, we shall take this offline if there's ever an answer for this. Another one, what is Changi Airport doing to drive Vietnam travelers into Singapore?
Okay. I think we are focused on trying to get new flights from new places. I think we are constantly working with airlines to see how to get some new points. Because today we are only connected to 3 points, but we can see, again, as the evolutions in Indonesia, in China, more and more of the secondary cities will be coming up. Then for some of the main airports as well, the capacity is getting very tight. Like in Ho Chi Minh and eventually in Hanoi, the slots will be very tight and no choice, the traffic will spill over. So we are talking to airlines on places like Hai Phong, where there's a Vietnam-Singapore industrial park. So hopefully there will already be traffic coming from there. Some of it is also more inbound and outbound. Places like maybe Dalat, like Nha Trang. So those are more like inbound places. But you need, like I mentioned earlier, you need all the traffic sources to sustain the flight. So inbound, outbound, both directions, we are keen to work with partners to see how to develop the flights. So for airlines where they fly from new places, we also know that upfront there is more risk. So usually upfront, maybe for our first 2 years, we may give discounts or waive the landing charges. We also put in marketing funds to help the airlines together to market this new destination, both marketing in Vietnam about Singapore and marketing in Singapore about these new places, so that after 1-2 years, the flights will stabilize and be sustained. So that's our approach.
Right, thanks. Well, there are 3 questions on average length of stay for Vietnamese in Singapore. I think suffice to say that it's longer than the average of 3.4 days. It's, I think, more closer to 4 or more days. And also, what percentage of Vietnam population do not hold passports still? Or rather, what's the percentage of the Vietnamese population holding passports? Would anyone know? I mean, it need not be very specific, but is it a huge percentage or not?
No, I think for big cities like Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi, the percentage that holding passports is I think, let's say 70%. Even my own family, my parents just got passports last year. And some of the in the countryside, like Mekong Deltas, or in the other smaller central coast city, where traveling is not their habit. So majorities of them, they don't have passport, except they are from governments, or they are retailers for some big company. When every year, that incentive company, they organize some incentive trips, then they apply for that. I think if I can say in total Vietnam, we think about more than 40% don't have passport, because passport is very strange idea to them. We also have some kinds of cases that our operation don't care much on the passport. Customer, they're traveling to the airport, they say this is their photo of the ID, Vietnamese ID card. Or sometimes they keep the passport at home. We also have some cases like that. We mentioned when the tour leader asked, "Where's your passport?" He said, "This is my photo of the passport." I say, "Why you give me the photos?" "Because it's very important. I have to keep it home." So just bring the paper document to travelings. So this is one of the things. We must say, Vietnamese in the big cities, when we have more chances to see the world, so people quite advanced. But majority of the people, especially even Hanoi, they are 3 years back comparing with Ho Chi Minh about the habit of traveling as well. I remember, because we have office in Da Nang, Nha Trang, Hai Phong, and even Hanoi. People from Ho Chi Minh City, like he say, during the Lunar New Year periods, what we call Tet holidays, when we have from 7 to 10 days off, people traveling, especially nowadays, in that period, Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh empty. If you get out of the street, you cannot see many motorbikes or cars. You cannot see anything in that period, because majority of people, they're traveling to their hometown, but nowadays they book the tour with us to travel, to hide away from that period. Because in that period, the whole family, they have long day off, and they want, because changing of habits, Vietnam used to be very conservative. So family is their central life, but nowadays it's not like that. They hide away from that. They rather spend a lot of money to take the whole group of family, run away from holidays, than stay home. Then relatives visit, drinks, days after days. They prefer doing that. That's why even some of the family, my company, we have repeated. This year, they're traveling this destination. Singapore is one of the destination, top choice, because short. Our package is 4 days. We have full itinerary or 1 day free for them. So that's why, and normally on the New Year Eve and the first day of the lunar calendar, people stay home just to place for their visit some of the grandparents, and in that evening, from that day until the second or the third day of the Tet holidays, they're traveling because of that. Hanoi, before, when we push on selling for our Hanoi office, you have to open the package to sell on that period, because in Ho Chi Minh, this is our peak season. But Hanoi saying cannot, because people from the north, their habit of traveling is different. But nowadays, the last 2 years, we can see the change. People from Hanoi, now, honestly, people from Hanoi, much more money than people from southern Vietnam. And people from Hanoi, when they spend money, they shop a lot, I must say. If you meet someone from northern, you can see they shop. And every time they're traveling, they buy so many things, because this gift is for this family, this relative, this sister, this brother, this auntie. So they bought a lot. But people from southern Vietnam, like Ho Chi Minh, we quite independent. So we prefer to spend a little bit less, but traveling quite often. So this is one of the changes from people. But nowadays, even in central Da Nang, our Da Nang office, last year, we have a great increase, because now people started to think tourism is not something that cannot think. Now it's a habit already. So in peak season, summer holidays, when children have their holidays, and then in Lunar New Year, this is the traveling times together. So that's why. And for Lunar New Year's, to us, 2 periods for our peak season is Tet holidays and summertime. But in calendar, Tet is not rolling up. Why? Because this is 9 days. But like I say, some years that the government allow us to take leave before the New Year Eve some days. Some years fall in behind. So even some year we prefer, for traveling, we prefer that the government approve, take the behind. Because New Year Eve, they will not let go. So the first day, after morning or in the afternoon, in the evening, they'll start travel. As soon as we have more days behind that calendar, then tourists, this is a successful year for us. That's why in that period, and the price very high. Even the air ticket, like you say, Chinese New Year. So everybody triple price. Even staff, if they work, you have to pay them triple the price than the normals. That's why in that period, only family, they are willing to pay for their own family. That's where they afford to pay. Incentive, friends, no. In that period, only rich families, they traveling. And this is our peak. And summertime, yes, everybody will go. And summertime is in Vietnam start in beginning of June until the mid of August. But July is our peak season. This is the period.
I think we have just about time for maybe 2 or maybe max 3 questions, but we have maybe 1 question from the floor. We can invite Michael.
Yeah. Can I ask? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I just have a burning question. Okay? Really. If I recall, based on everybody sharing, so what I observed is that Hanoi population is about more than 2/3 if you compare to Ho Chi Minh. And if I remember, right, Ho Chi Minh Airport has already exceeded capacity. Hanoi is about to, but there is still room to go. But if you compare the number of flights, right, from Hanoi in Singapore and Ho Chi Minh in Singapore, the number of flights of Ho Chi Minh is 3 times higher, about 3 times higher. The fourth observation is, we all know income level in Hanoi, especially hidden income. It's a bit hard to say, but arguably, northern people, they might have some other kind of actual, kind of income. They can spend more, like as Maggie said. So if we combine everything like that, the key question is why there is a big gap between what Singapore can get from the north market compared to the south. Is it the gap from infrastructure like the flight connectivity. Chikia said that you need to come from business perspective. You need to sustain the flights. So the other question is from the trade partner, from Singapore tourism, what can we do to close that gap for the next maybe 3 to 5 years?
Right. I think there are several parts to this question. Firstly, on the connectivity part, why is Ho Chi Minh so much better connected in terms of frequency as compared to Hanoi? All I know is one is 2 hours, one is 3 hours. Maybe Chin Kiat can share more on the connectivity part first.
True. I think there are probably many reasons. One is proximity is nearer. So you can see in terms of flight, the pricing as well. So Ho Chi Minh will be more affordable than for your Hanoi flights. I think it's also a range of activities where Ho Chi Minh probably has more business, commercial activity going on. So for the tourism arrival numbers is 500,000. From our passenger numbers is 1.7 million. So there are also Singaporeans who are going in to do various kinds of businesses in Ho Chi Minh. Nevertheless, I think we are very keen to work with all partners, with airlines, grow more flights to Hanoi, but also to explore other up and coming cities like Haiphong, like Nha Trang that we mentioned earlier. Of course, some of these, it may be a bit premature for direct flights where the demand is not high enough. So a lot of it, because the airline will be the ones bearing a lot of the commercial risk, they must be very reassured. So frequently we will propose a business case to them, and it's not easy to get the precise data because some of the traffic, the source traffic, for example, could be from Haiphong, but today they show up as a Hanoi number. So we have to constantly do many of this kind of research and study with STB and other partners to pinpoint where the traffic sources and then reassure the airlines that actually there is traffic, or you'll be a first mover, then you will maybe grow the market as well. So for us, it's a never-ending job to see how to grow better connectivity and more flights there. Yeah.
Right. The second part of the question, you alluded to the pockets of wealth in the north. I suppose that is also related to one question I have here. Are we reaching out to affluent Vietnamese travelers? I'm not certain if Chuk or Maggie, are you able to assure us we are reaching out to the affluent Vietnamese travelers? Or they are there, but we are not reaching out to them as yet?
Like I say, even Viettravel, we have Hanoi office, we are head office, we're working with them is under pressure as well. So I think one of the things is that working with people from the north is it's not easy at all. And then, like I say, in the presentation, I also see Roxanne focus for 2018, focus to expand Hanoi, because according to him, Hanoi is potential, more potential. So I think this year STB will do many activities. Even my company, we already got the supported and hosted from STB to do the farm trip for our corporate clients. I think last month, when we combine with STB, we invite corporate clients from Hanoi traveling to Singapore, show them the incentive that can offer. But honestly, every big company, their head office is in Ho Chi Minh City. And all the decision makers is based in Ho Chi Minh City. That's why I must say, in Ho Chi Minh, the number that we grow is we count on based on the number of packs that we're traveling. But honestly, people will traveling from the northern Vietnam, like Hanoi, central, depart from Da Nang, and then Ho Chi Minh City as well. That's why people will think that Hanoi is a little bit slow, but decision maker is all made by Ho Chi Minh City. And Hanoi, one thing is that the government. So the government is one of the sources that we can invest. And even we do many things to do the advertising that we can also combine with STB when we give support free from the STB for new clients or VITAM fare that in Hanoi we encourage people to traveling. So I think Hanoi will be increased in the future. But like I say, low-cost carrier is one of the top choice that using. But if low-cost carrier, they think that they scared to invest on the flight from northern Vietnam going to other countries. It's also very difficult for us. But in June, there will be new airport, Vân Đồn Airport in Quảng Ninh, nearby Hải Phòng areas. There will be another international airport for northern Vietnam. So there will be attract more international flights coming to that areas. So Hải Phòng is also a good city where many mafias and then rich people. It's just popular. Rich people in Hải Phòng. So Hải Phòng is also a good city to invest. We also have a branch there as well. That's why we can see. So Hải Phòng also doing very well.
Chuk, you have something to add? Mafias?
Yeah, just I don't like the fact that mafia is coming to Singapore. So I just want to add up 2 points regarding the FA3 traveler. So one of the first point is one of the insight we are having between the difference between Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh user is if you pay attention, you will see like customer from Hanoi visiting Singapore. Normally they will travel in group. It should be like families, small family like parent and 2 kids. But for Ho Chi Minh City, it including both the youth, I mean friends, couple, independent travelers, and young families. One of the reasons why, because Ho Chi Minh City customer tend to travel overseas first. Why for Hanoi customer, when they are young and why they prefer to do like backpacking travel on bike, because we have a lot of mountain and highland in the north. So you can see like actually the target audience from Hanoi should be around 26 up, while in Ho Chi Minh City you can have larger range from 22 to 26. I think this is one of the reasons. And the second reason is for me actually the marketing activity in Hanoi is really tough, because in Hanoi, it's really hard. They don't really believe in advertising like Ho Chi Minh City. Ho Chi Minh City is easy. Okay, you give me promotion, I will use. But in Hanoi, it's not likely. Maybe it's counting on the word of mouth more, especially for tourism industry, because for tourism industry, you will be charged before you actually use the service, right? So you need to pay for the tickets first before knowing, oh wow, how is Universal Studio is. So in Hanoi, it's really important with the matter of trust. So advertising doesn't, about the live advertising doesn't work well, but viral marketing, word of mouth is very important. That's why in Hanoi, we don't really bombing much regarding advertising, but we are building up our micro influencers network, like hot mom, like families, the leader of the family, but really hot. A fan base only have around 10K followers, but their engagement is super, and people just watch this. They are telling the story, not like Ho Chi Minh City. Ho Chi Minh City, you may use like celebrities. It works, but in Hanoi it doesn't work. So in Hanoi, if you want to run marketing activities and you need to get attention, the word of mouth and the viral marketing is very important. And don't let them unhappy, because the first thing they're unhappy is taking a picture and post on Facebook, and it will be far Weibo, and it will be viral really quickly, and people, regardless what you explain to the customer, people don't believe it, just believe the very first post ever.
Well, one final question, which I'm combining a few questions into one. Generally, any general business advice for our Singapore trade who are interested to do business in Vietnam, be it a travel trade or other travel trade, as in the travel agencies or non-travel agencies going to Vietnam? Interestingly, this morning when I met a few of my trade friends, a few of them said similar things, as in interested in the market, but I don't speak the language, I don't know a lot of people. And it seems, at least when on first engagement, they seem a bit conservative, Vietnamese trade. any general advice for our Singapore friends?
For me, the first thing you need to pay attention is localization. This means that you need to have everything in Vietnamese, every single thing. For example, for Klook, we launched the platform in July, but the conversion is really pick up since September. That's when we have all of the website, the application, and all of the activities in Vietnamese. So localization is the key. And the second one is localization means that you need to support them from end to end. Because basically tourism is the service industry, so they want to be served actually. They want to be served actually, okay, I can book online, but I still need your consulting regarding touring, where to eat, where to place, something like that. So for me, the only thing is localization.
My advice that you have to be patient. and sometimes behavior of people's is just different from Singaporeans. Singaporeans, I can realize when I'm working with some suppliers, they can, frankly speaking, open mind. If they like, they say they like. If they don't like, they say they don't like. But if in Vietnamese, you ask them, no comment, but then complain. So, and if you want to invest, I think should have started in Ho Chi Minh City, because majorities of Vietnamese in company working in Ho Chi Minh that can speak English. So I think language is not the barriers if you work with suppliers in Vietnam, because officially all Vietnamese go to school, we have to learn English. So people can understand you sometimes, but because they not speak English quite often, so sometimes you think that they don't understand, but school, we have to learn English at the first grade. In my generation, I have, from 6th grade onward, we have to learn English already. So people, when they see, some of them, they can, writing, understanding, reading is okay. But just only speaking, they got some kind of difficulty. But for suppliers, I think Vietnam still have opportunities if you want to work with or invest. But of course, you have to have some locals. Let's say you have local staff, you can build up the business starting from, have one representative, Vietnamese, so can understand locals. Then start time by time, then you can understand the habit of people, then easy for you to work. I say Vietnamese, there's not kinds of, I must say, rather a little bit polite. So not like hot temper, it's not like that. But it's just different between the cultures. Started, my advice that start from southern Vietnam first, Ho Chi Minh City first. Then you understand, then you go Hanoi. Hanoi is talking about relationship, not talking about anything. So anything we work on based on relationship. It's not like Ho Chi Minh, we work by on like benefits of the win-win together. So some of the things that, so don't worry, Vietnam is still developing countries. So I think this is more opportunities if you really want to invest.
Right, so relationship is important. We're going to leave some time for you to have a relationship with the panelists. So I think we've come to our end of session on the stage today. So would you join me and give a round of applause to our panelists for spending time with us? Thank you, Maggie, Chuk, Jinket.